The following is copywritten intellectual property. Note that all rights are reserved to the writer. Any and all infringements in any capacity shall be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. With that being said, the listener, by choosing to proceed, understands and therefore agrees to the authority legally allotted to the writer. 2. Vague subjects. The Zeitgeist has tactic of using vague subjects or augmenting his speech to negate referencing the subject left parenthesis as discussed. So is the interaction with conjecture of subject rather than the prior subject's matter. This is the Zeitgeist schizophrenia engineering. Applied for communication rather than research, hence, the later denotation's faculties stand autonomously while functioning in tandem with his vague subjects. His tactic is usually implemented after the target has indicated to pursue the confrontational phase of the Zeitgeist false dilemma. The Zeitgeist implementation of the tactic. The tactics is most notable when his comments are focusing on and elaborating the target's chosen verbs. His assertions are certainly deduced by the targets. He presents them in the form of conjecture. This delivery retains his plausible deniability to the extent of the targets, thus blatantly propositioning the target to a goal. The vague subject left parenthesis S tactic renders the interaction so that only the two involved are aware of the subject's debate, and thus the target becomes isolated from any potential of exterior support. At this point in the interaction, the pervious false dilemma as validity has been given by the target's acknowledgement and escalating hostility. Then, the act of isolating the target from their constituents engages the majority of psychological effects denoted by his reverse psychology. His tactful actions has created yet another false dilemma for the target to find their inevitable convolution in. If the target is found to be audacious, then the Zeitgeist shall communicate the nature of the target's conjecture and remand himself to the victim of his plausible deniability. The target will then either convolute or revoke their plausible deniability. The Zeitgeist's rebuttal of the tactic. If a Zeitgeist presents himself as the goalie or flagellant victim, the targets will evoke their predation by exhibiting his vague subjects to announce their conjecture. For this maneuver, he will often reserve for when he has found multiple targets who are aware of his plausible deniability. The targets will commonly observe themselves as more comfortable to exhibit their conjecture due to the feral inclination of safety in numbers, thus incarnating the interaction into a pseudo-trail. The targets will announce their conjecture amongst themselves to hold a contest to determine who amongst them can fathom the most absurd speculation. Throughout this orgy of conjecture, the Zeitgeist will remain mostly silent with the exceptions of his jovial laughter to the volleys of pompous assertions the targets infer. Thus, he has upheld faculties of his plausible deniability, reverse psychology, socio-empathetic manifestation, by appearing to passively indulge in the festivity. His actions allow the illusion of camaraderie to guise the blatant predation as to facilitate his observations of the targets. Inevitably, one of the targets will engage in hostilities under the influence of an assumption. Regardless of what their assumption may be, it is often derived. When the fun has been had and he still remains at a passive state, the Zeitgeist may then decide to implement the tactic on the brash target or use his other various contingencies. If he has chosen to engage the target, he will use his reverse psychology conveyed through the remand of his vague subjects. Though the illusion of camaraderie is convoluted for the hostile target, it isn't for the others. Then, he can incite the same orgiastic conjecture, yet with the belligerent target forced into his role from the previous pseudo-trail. The target then has the same four choices of resolutions previously stated in his reverse psychology. 3. Tactful verbosity. Tactful verbosity is his tactic of supplementing a long-winded sentence into brief multisyllabic chain of concise words. For negating predation, it is more fruitful to converse quickly and concisely as possible. If it is the Zeitgeist's intention to incite hostility, then he shall use this tactic to debase the target, thus engaging his false dilemma. Manipulative terminology is his tactic of redacting the keyword left parenthesis S in a statement with the synonym left parenthesis S at mold the conveyed denotation left parenthesis S to inspire a premeditated interpretation of the connotation. Within the usual speed of interaction, most cannot find the time, or the rationality, to denote every word cognitively and gauge their subtle effects on the connotations of said interaction. 4. False dilemma. The Zeitgeist's use of his false dilemma is to instill misdirection in the target's cognizant processes to assert psychological superiority over the target and interaction as a whole. This tactic's efficacy is in direct correlation target's hostility and or gullibility. If the target is overzealous to assert their dominance, their candor may be assisted by slights or scoffs to their ego as to inspire them to cast patience, tactics, and premeditation to chance. The Zeitgeist will do so in whatever capacity the interaction demands, so long as his principle of plausible deniability remain upheld. With the target forced to deduce said tactic implemented, his plausible deniability, they become more aware of the dilemma that is to ensue from what they inevitably perceive as a pervasive confrontation. Thus, after enough of the Zeitgeist has implications, the target will choose between acknowledgement or disavowal, regardless of which conclusion the target conducts the still act chosen to disengage the maneuverability of his plausible deniability, without the Zeitgeist has obligation to concur. If the target is obstinate to his false dilemma and clings to a passive-aggressive candor, it proves exponentially more defaming for the target. Seeing as the Zeitgeist has nothing to gain from revoking his plausible deniability, he will not. Therefore, the interaction shall not end until the target concedes, even transgressing the periods in which the two parties are separate. This being the Zeitgeist as tactic, he will already have the contingencies calculated for the possibilities and methods of the interaction. The target, in contrast, pondering on the interaction, will develop a thought pattern of contempt for his thoughts being filled with the connotations of the interaction. Hence, when the two reconvene, the target will initiate the hostilities from the prior engagement and indict himself. Not to imply a resolution upon the very next time that to convene. No, the presented formula is inevitable. 5. Flagellant silence. The flagellant silence is the literal incarnation of the Zeitgeist negative stimuli. If brandished in any interaction, this tactic will serve as the primary catalyst to the majority of his various tactics and most importantly uphold his plausible deniability. In tandem, the flagellant silence is designed to inspire a paranoid speculative state within the target. The logic of his false dilemma is quite simple. If the means to verification have been rendered inaccessible, then speculation is the nature of the inevitable deduction. The target, subconsciously aware of the connotations, is forced to perceive that interaction as a stalemate, thus developing the interaction to that of a pregnant silence. This state is the preverbal impasse, during which the target has perceived the status quo of the interaction has been broken. Furthermore, to whomever is to reinstate it will revoke their plausible deniability and suffer the potentials of debasement. Amongst the various applications of the F.S./T.S. tactic stands the most potent idiom for the Zeitgeist socio-subversion is that the target, if remanded to the F.S./T.S. will begin the exhibit the Zeitgeist socio-empathetic manifestation. Thus, granting the Zeitgeist the choice to inspire all of his tactics unabated. If the target is found to be hostile at this stage of interaction, the Zeitgeist may, at any point deemed fruitful, re-implement the F.S./T.S. as it to maintain his plausible deniability. This contingency is designed to allow the target to assume dominance, plead their conjecture, and further incriminate themselves. The Zeitgeist tactic of F.S./T.S. is no metaphorically different than confronting the very notion of our inevitability as mortals. 6. Socio-empathetic manifestation. The tactic of demonstrating and elaborating upon the said connotations of interaction left parenthesis as to communicate the denotation of the connotations is the blatant subject matter. The transferal of the subject to that of said connotations incites his false dilemma, during which his target has the illusion that the Zeitgeist has renounced his plausible deniability. The target then must choose between A. Acknowledging and honoring the existence of the subtext, thus revoking their plausible deniability, and begin the process of often acquiescence incarnate, obliging obligations and repercussions of their actions before, during, and after said event horizon. B. Denying the existence of said subtext, clinging to their plausible deniability, thoroughly casting the silhouette of cowardice at the very notion of potential debate, criticism, and scrutiny. It is fully possible for said target to transgress their conviction dictated and demonstrated publicly by their conduct during the event horizon, yet the defaming ramifications that would pursue them from the instant henceforth would render their future platform left parenthesis as moot. The SEM tactic is not remanded to the verbalized medium and functions in the simple eloquence of his flagellant silence virtually omnipotently. Body language is the most effective mode of conveyance for benign hypnosis and subconscious discrepancies. There is no definitive movements to have memorized, only one prerequisite. The Zeitgeist must cognitively engage his perpetual lunged circuit to induce himself into a catatonic state and only engage any actions, banal movement, twitches, breath augmentations, eye contact, or whatever the circumstance may allow him to serve as rebuttals to any conjecture from said target. Thus, any advances upon the Zeitgeist may only be substantiated as his assumptions, i.e. predation, with any validity.